I also think that that's another important aspect of it, is after the praying and after you feel like, okay, this might be where God would want me to start this work. Assimilating to the culture, making sure that you kind of have an understanding of the area and the people, and also connecting with the local body of believers. Because you don't want to go in.
If there is one.
If there is one. Because you don't just want to go in and disrupt what's already happening there, right? You want to make sure that the work that you're doing not fits in with the culture, but fits for the context of where it is.
Well, now that we've established some general information about being a missionary, I want to dig a little bit deeper. What are the steps towards starting your own missionary ministry? Do you become independent immediately, or I think you had alluded, Greg, to being part of an organization that has done this for several decades is integral to your mental health and the health of your ministry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in essence, you got to follow the leading of the Lord. My counsel would be to be connected with an organization.
Okay.
And a benefit of that is there is a support structure there. Our situation is different. We're not pioneering a work, and we've gone to a place where someone else laid the foundation, and we're continuing on in their stead. But even in the cases where there is pioneering work being done, you have a support network that's there that's helping you to be resourced. Many times, even if there's maybe not someone in the country or field where you are, there's someone adjacent. And so maybe they're from a culture that's going to be similar and maybe understands a little bit of the nuances of what you would need to do. And all of that is only possible because you're part of something significantly bigger than yourself.
Right.
Now there's the downside of organization, right? Of policies and politics that can sometimes be inherent. But to me, it's a willing trade-off. I don't agree with every policy for sure, but at the same time, I am in our situation. We had to have help. Come in. We went through a really difficult transition on our last term on the field. That was well unexpected, and was beyond really our experience to know how to navigate. And being a part of an organization really helped us to navigate it, how to handle it with the church, how to help the church be healthy and whole moving forward.
Well, you had mentioned about you have the benefit of landing somewhere where the path had already been carved out before you, so it's not landing on fresh soil, so to speak. So before you arrive, how do you scout out a place where the Lord has called you? So there's, of course, the spiritual aspect. The Lord says, you're going to Canary Islands, let's say. What's the practical aspect where we're going here and not over there, or whatever it may be? And then how do you make connections for a location like that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oftentimes, if a missionary is going to a place that they've never been before, and they're starting a new work, in some organizations, ours included, they will allow you to do like scouting trips. Maybe go for a few weeks and get a feel. You're going to a land, a place, a people, a language that none of which you're familiar with. And so maybe go and do prayer walks, and so some missionaries they arrive to a city or a place. Even the missionaries that started the work where we are, they went to they got to the islands and they went to a few different places, and they were just praying as they were going. They would go to an area, a city, a region, and pray, and then they go to another area, region, and pray. And then in all that process, discerning, God in all of this, not just the islands, but where in the islands. Not just where in the islands, but what in the islands. And it's this give and take relationship or process that happens where, it really is something that's being birthed in prayer before it begins. I remember talking to a ministry that started some years ago that rescues women out of human trafficking in essence, but specifically out of strip clubs in Louisville, Kentucky. And I remember asking her, I said, how did you get, how?
Yeah.
She said, well, we spent 2 years just praying. It's like 2 years. She goes, 2 years. We would drive to every strip club in the city of Louisville, park in their parking lot, and we'd spend an hour, 2 hours praying.
Wow. And
then from there, we started to develop a relationship with the owners or the managers of each club, and kind of say, this is what's in our heart. You know, this is what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to help these women. And she said, you'd be surprised how many of them were willing to say, yeah, come on in. And so
wow.
2 years without any interaction with anybody involved in the industry, and about another 2 years of investing and developing relationships. And now they have homes and a whole system of how to reach women that are in that industry and help them not just leave it, but reestablish their lives. But it all starts in prayer.
Yeah.
You know, of really seeking the leading of the Lord in all of it.
I also think that that's another important aspect of it, is after the praying and after you feel like, okay, this might be where God would want me to start this work. Assimilating to the culture, making sure that you kind of have an understanding of the area and the people, and also connecting with the local body of believers. Because you don't want to go in.
If there is one.
If there is one. Because you don't just want to go in and disrupt what's already happening there, right? You want to make sure that the work that you're doing not fits in with the culture, but fits for the context of where it is. So for example, we have some missionary friends that do like business for missions. And so they will go into an area and they are not going to start a church, they're not going to pastor, but they're starting a gymnasium where they're teaching, you know, kickboxing. Actually, this is a true story. Really? There are missionaries that we know that have a gym in a place where you're not allowed to have, you know, Christians or a church. They started a kickboxing gym to have a witness of Jesus in the area, but in the context of that culture, they fit where people will respond to the gospel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, how cool is that?
You know, in essence, missions work is not franchising. You know, when McDonald's is franchising, somebody is buying the franchise and replicating exactly what exists somewhere else.
Yeah.
The church is not that.
Okay.
You know, the church should be contextualized, meaning, you know, that how the church gathers and what they do in that gathering should look differently in different parts of the world because cultures are different.
Yeah, the people are different, of course.
And so, you know, all those come into effect as you spend time praying and studying the people and the place and the culture. You're taking all that in and you're allowing the Holy Spirit to lead you. And how do I contextualize the gospel? How do I make the gospel, God help me to make the gospel make sense to these people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it must take a great deal of research. And once you reach that step, you found that place, you've done your temporary stay, and you feel this is where the Lord was really calling you, and you prayed, and everything fits well in your spirit. Get into the practical side. I claim ignorance on this. When it comes to itinerating, Nikita was telling me off camera, itinerating is a bad word in the missionary field of ministry. Nikita, please enlighten us.
So itineration.
Keep it PG.
Yes. No horror stories.
Well, no, but itineration is one of those things that every organization does it a little bit different. There are different denominations that do it a little bit different. Okay. But the organization that we are a part of requires us to come back every 3 to 4 years. And then we make connections with the pastors and the churches that are supporting us. We also visit new churches and new pastors to make connections for financial support. And then once we're able to raise our budget to be able to have a working budget that we will be able to sustain ourselves for 4 or 5 years on the field, then we're able to have the approval to be able to go and begin the ministry overseas. And so in that aspect, itineration is a lot of hard work. It is the networking, it is the connecting, it is the getting people sick of seeing your faces. So you're showing up to conferences and sectional meetings and trying to make these connections with pastors. So in that aspect, and especially, you know, we have young children, so they itinerate with us.
Oh, wow.
So it is a lot of work. It is really difficult work.
And you were mentioning about if you're 3 or 4 years on the mission field, you have to come back for some time, right?
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about that and what that immigration process looks like if you're having to go to and from an area.
And so, each organization does a little bit differently with like the travel to and from the field. With the Assembly of God system, the system of the organization we're part of, it requires us to come back to the United States every so many years. And the idea is that it helps to reinvigorate the relationships that we have with churches. It also gives a time for thoughtful reevaluation of our budget. Cost of everything always goes up. And so with every 3 to 4 years coming back to the States gives thoughtful intention to those processes to say, okay, what is the actual cost of living today? And how can we adjust what the budget is to make it more sustainable for the people to remain? And so with our situation, with our organization, it functions in that way. And so itineration is different than furlough. Some organizations, they call it furlough, and the missionary comes back to the States, and maybe they visit some churches to raise missions awareness, but they're not responsible for their own budget. In our organization, we are.
Okay.
We're given a budget, X number of dollars in monthly support, and once you have it, you can go back.
Okay, that's
And
really
until
cool.
you get it, you're going to stay in the States.
Oh, man.
And so, but it helps to foster personal connection between sender and sendee, in essence, which studies would show that increases longevity.
Okay.
It's more sustainable in the long run because it's not somebody giving, like she had said, it's not somebody giving to some picture on the wall.
Yeah, but a real family.
It's somebody, I know these people. The church we were at 2 Sundays ago, they were people saying, they remembered our daughter's names, and they're like, when you guys go back, we're going to make sure we're praying for them. And
We've been on the field, and we've had people send our children birthday cards
Oh, wow.
from churches.
How cool.
And being on the field in a different culture, in a different language, and then on an island, and sometimes it can feel isolating. And these little, oh, here's a birthday card. Oh, we're praying for you. Hey, we know your family. Hey, we just want to make sure y'all are okay. That means the world to us.
Well, once you get on that mission field, you've gone through that process. Are you serving as a pastor? Are you serving as a worship leader, an evangelist? Are you all things to all people? Tell me a little bit about that. Where do you fit in?
Our role or function on the field is we pastor a church. It's an international church. And so we're the principal pastors there. Nikita leads worship when we're on the field. And so that's been, for us in our situation, that's kind of where we've landed. It's going to be different in different places. And so for us, we didn't go there really in 2019 when we went back. We anticipated planting a church. Within 6 months, the other missionary family we were working with had some family issues that required them to leave the field abruptly. And so almost overnight, from beginning of December 2019 to end of December, everything was changed.
Wow.
And our area director, which would be like our boss, he's responsible for about 60 to 80 missionary units. He approached us and he said, "Hey, I know you guys are there to do something else, but you're there, and the church needs someone to pastor it." And so he approached us, and we fought him for about a year, resisted for about a year, before saying yes. We had 2 really close ministry mentors in our lives that had both suffered some serious consequences in their families, just from their style of ministry and such. And so for us, we wanted to take a moment to count the cost. We weren't willing to sacrifice family for ministry. And so we took about a year as interim, and then we said yes.
I know it comes, one of my favorite scriptures in terms of discernment is like you said, the builder counting the cost before he begins to build the house. And that could be a tough thing, pastoring a church with a flock looking after you and your wife. Like, where do we go from here? We're going through some tough stuff. And so I applaud you on that for letting the Lord lead you to that. And then with wisdom, anyone who's pastoring or leading a ministry to any capacity needs accountability. Yeah. We have our friends, we have people that we can look to in times of trouble, but who really keeps you accountable? Is it the organization you're part of? Is it an elder, so to speak, above you?
Yeah, I firmly believe accountability. Really, accountability is only as good as the individual themselves.
Okay.
Even if you have the greatest structure of accountability over top of you, if you are not honest with anybody, that accountability can't do you any good. Mm-hmm. And so, for us, the most influential part of accountability is the individual themselves, making yourself willing to be accountable. Because it's an uncomfortable process, right? Nobody wants to feel like what I'm doing is wrong.
Right.
And even more so when what you're doing is wrong, to know that somebody's going to need to step in and say, hey, it is out of kindness and goodness that they're doing it, but it doesn't feel that way in the moment.
Be hurtful, yeah.
And so, yes, having people like Matt and Pastor John, they've been definitely part of that. But like I mentioned, we have an area director, someone who is responsible for us. Because, here's the other part of it is, we can try to fluff up things, the spiritual terms all we want, but at the end of the day, there's still a physical government in this world that is going to make a decision based on your actions that you've done, and if you do something illegal or unethical, you could face repercussions. And so, we have, there is structure in our organization, structure in place. It's only as useful as the individual allows themselves to be accountable.
Yeah.
But it's there. And here's the truth of it. The more willing we are to be accountable, the more open we are, the more transparent we're willing to be, the more it fosters trust.
Great.
And this goes back to, why would I tell a missionary wanting to go out that they need to be connected with an organization? Because your life from here on out is going to be based on trust. As you're meeting pastors, as you're going to people, as you can have the greatest vision in the world, and feel like you have the greatest, most important calling in the world. But if you can't foster trust between you and those that need to partner with you to get there, it doesn't matter. And so, being a part of an organization that has that level of accountability helps to foster that trust. And in essence, that's going to be something that will keep you in your place of calling even longer. Does that make sense?
It does.